I'm here today on behalf of the unity in the community to reflect back on the days when this community was rife with drugs, alcohol, homelessness, everything you could think of. This is what I remember of the old St Anne's. Fortunately now there is organisations out there to support people with drug and alcohol problems. Do I wish that was the case when I was younger? I would have loved that to be the case, but unfortunately I didn't have any of that, and I suppose that's what made it so hard for me. I don't regret any of it, surely not, because I've turned my life around, and I'm one of the lucky ones, because majority of my friends passed away, have died of drug addiction, overdoses, HIV. So, you know, to be one of those who's come out and actually doing something for the community, and trying to show that, you know, people can turn their life around and overcome. So yeah, this video is just basically reflecting on what actually I went through. So this was a vibrant community back in the 70s and 80s. You know, there was a lively co-op, bank, Bird's Cakes, the chip shop I actually worked in, which was, you know, it was a part of what we were back in the day. And it's so hard to come back and see it as it is. But I suppose life moves on. But it's still very difficult for me to look at. One of the guys on the market, I've known him for 30 years, still here, from Centre Market to here. So that is a great thing to see today, me coming back here. So I want to start from the beginning with this story. And will I find this difficult telling you this story? Yeah. Every time I have to reflect back on it, it brings emotions, because there's a lot of stuff that happened there. But it started from a very young age. We lived on Woodborough Road, on Plowright Street. And I lived there from, I think, 65. As I was growing up, I got 5 sisters, and all of us lived in this 3-bedroom house. My mother was with my father, but my father used to just come at weekends because he lived literally 3 miles down the road with his wife. So yeah, my father had quite a few women, and my mother was a part of that. My mother and my father were very, very abusive, mentally, physically, and I think because I was the only boy, my father and my mother tended to take things out of me more than so the girls. I think, you know, the girls were the good ones and I was the bad one. So, you know, things started off not so great for me at a very young age. Going to school, Elms Junior School, Cram Street. There was only 2 mixed race kids in the school, and that was me and Terry Logan. I'll never forget it, because, you know, we were bullied on both sides. You know, we got it from the blacks and we got it from the whites, which didn't give us the greatest start in life at all, to be honest with you. And also for myself was identifying which one I wanted to be, black or white, because that's what I did for a long time. Couldn't justify where I wanted to be in the community. So I struggled with that from a very young age. As I progressed from Elms Junior School, to be honest with you, I think it really started so much even worse when I got to Elliot Durham, because that's when the severe bullying came in, and trying to find my identity. I remember first running away at the age of 10, and it was, I ended up getting to the top of Woodborough Road, and the police found me took me home and asked me the reasons why I ran away, and basically I just said I just couldn't identify with myself, and I didn't like what was happening in the house with my mum and dad. Police, I remember having words with my mother and father, and then when they went away, I got the hiding of my life. And that's when I kind of realised that things were not going to get better, because I was crying out for help. There was times when I used to lay in bed wishing that I was adopted, and my real parents were going to come and fetch me. And that's how bad it was for me at a very young age. I'll give you an example. I used to watch my mother, the landlord of the property. My mum used to pay me rent with sex. You know, my mother was a prostitute. There was no doubt about it. My father was a pimp. He had several women. But these things are what I was engaged in at a very, very young age. And I think because I was trying to just get away from it all and find my own identity, I just rebelled. So when I was at school and then I was getting bullied, and then when teachers used to call me stupid and I would never amount to nothing, and you know, I would end up in prison. And is that been the case? Yeah. Yes, it has. These things did happen. But one day in school, headmaster calls me down to his room. Teacher made a complaint, and the headmaster grabbed hold of me and shook me. And for the first time in my life, I decided to react, and I went and lunged at the teacher. And I remember them telling me I got expelled, and I had to go home and tell my mum and my dad. So that wasn't a very great journey home, I tell you, because when I got home, when I told my mother, she said, "That's it, I've had enough of you," and told my sister's partner was at the house at the time, and she just said, "Michael, throw him out." And literally, at the age of 14, my mother put me out on the streets, and I begged and begged and begged her not to do so, but she wasn't having it. So at the age of 14, out on the streets, didn't know what the hell I was going to be doing, petrified. So the first night I came back to the house, because we've got a shed in the back garden, and I slept in the shed. And early in the morning, one of my sisters seen me leaving, told my mother. So I came back the second night to sleep in the shed. My mother put a lock on the shed, so I couldn't get in. And that's when I realised that I was going to actually have to do this on my own. And that was a very, very, very scary thought. So I remember my first night trolling the streets. And there was always a place that I remember. I used to go to Carrington Lido. Is it Carrington Lido? The Lido on Mansfield Road up by Sherwood. I used to go there as a kid all the time. And there was some few empty properties that I remember. And that's where I ended up on my first night, because there were no windows in the window or anything, so I climbed in. And that's where I spent the next 6 months, living in this empty house. And at night I used to sit in this chair just reflecting on what the hell was going to happen and where I was going to end up. So I used to start hanging about down here on the Chase, and just at the bottom of the Chase here used to be, I'm sure it was the Ark, or it was adventure playground, and there was a few guys from school, Pikey, Neil, and a few others that I used to go to school with, who used to bully me as well, but I felt safe around them, and we used to hang about down here all the time, and I remember some of the guys were already dealing for a dealer down here, I'm not going to mention no names. Anyway, one night he caught me at the bottom of the park here on my own, and said that he wanted me to deal for him, and I said, there's just no way I'm going to do that. And he said, yes you are. And that's when he pulled out a gun, put it to my head and said, you have a choice. And I got to tell you, I pissed myself, because I was absolutely petrified at the thought. But that's where it all started. So I became a dealer at the age of 14. And I was selling weed, smack. Crack hadn't quite come on the scene then, but it was a lot of heroin use. As time progressed and I started living on the streets, things got a little bit worse, to where I started to use. Chase the dragon, got the foil out, lighter underneath, tube, had a roll, you know, used to sit with the lads in the adventure playground, off your head, gouch out. But I believe it helped, because there was at nights when you were trying to sleep and you weren't feeling safe, you know, that it would take you away from all of that. So yeah, it would make me feel safe, and that is how it all progressed, basically. And maybe a year, 2 years later, that I started to inject. Never ever thought that I would do that. I would say, you know, out of all these guys who were living on the streets and were junkies, there's certain things that I would never do. For one, I would never inject in my feet and in my legs and in my neck and places like that, but I ended up injecting into my arm. When I started on the heroin, crack started to come in, started smoking the crack like one-o. And that's when the crack kind of took over, and I stopped using the heroin so much. And then I basically combined the two and started injecting the heroin and the crack cocaine together. And yeah, it got bad. To the point where I started to thieve. I wasn't making enough money from selling the drugs. And I remember breaking into my first house, Stenton. And then I was getting into fights, getting back at bullies who used to bully me at school. And there was 3 particular guys who used to bully me so much when I was a kid at school. And that was Neil, Robert, and another guy. And one night I were off my tits, been out and had some drinks, and decided to get some revenge. Took a baseball bat, went round to their houses and beat them. And I mean, I beat them to a pulp. Remember getting arrested by the police. And that's when my life spiraled again, and I ended up going to prison in 1984. So at this point, going to prison, I still got my heroin and crack addiction, knowing that I was going to jail, knowing that I was going to do cold turkey. Goes into jail, went to Featherstone in Wolverhampton, long-termers prison, because basically I got charged with GB8 section 18, which is grievous bodily harm with intent to do serious damage. So they wouldn't send me to a normal jail, Ranby or anywhere like that, or Borstal. They sent me to this long-termers nick. And so I remember somebody saying to me, you're gonna learn at that place. Anyway, ended up going to Featherstone. First day there, you all got to wear dungarees. I remember wearing the dungarees, and there was several guys who were new turners in the prison, and we were there standing around in our, what you call it, dungarees. And that's when I, you know, realised that I'm in prison. and shit, how am I going to deal with this? And I remember going to Mandestelle the first night and I cried like a baby. Cried and cried and cried. Not ashamed of it. Was scared, was petrified, because that's when the realisation set in that I got to spend this time in prison. Anyway, came out on the landing first night. They were playing table tennis. I used to love playing table tennis. Thought I was a very good player. Anyway, I ended up playing some guy called George, who's a lifer, and beat him. And some guys looked at me and went, "Are you mad?" I said, "What do you mean? He's never been beat. Nobody don't beat George." So anyway, George came, shook my hand, and we became friends. And so much so, we played pretty much every day when we were there. And George basically took me under his wing and protected me while I was in the prison, because nobody wanted to mess with George. He was there for murder. Killed a bouncer when he was at a young age and he wasn't getting released. So he took me under his wing, came out of prison. In 1984, I got parole after 6 months, and George wrote my parole, because you have to write a recommendation of why you should be released, and he wrote it for me. And I remember George, when I went to tell him I got parole, give me a slap across the face, and I remember this slap because I'll never forget it, because he said, "If you ever come back here again, I'll kill you." And I think that was one of the reasons why I never ended up going back to prison, because of George. But I also owe George a lot in my life. But when I came back out, did I learn my lesson? I think I did for about 6 months, and then went back on the drugs. And I was with my first wife at the time, who I was married to. And we were together for a very long time. And she knew that I was doing the drugs, and she was helpful to a degree. She knew I was still bringing money in, so she allowed me to carry on doing what I was doing, because, you know, she loved me very much and just wanted to be with me. So I allowed certain things to happen, and got to the point where, yeah, I was comatose in. I remember smoking 2 days, 3/4 of an ounce of crack cocaine, which is a severe amount. And trust me, my addiction was massive. And they used to call me Big Lungs, because when I used to go on the glass pipe, you know, I could just suck it forever. But yeah, it got to a point where I got 2 boys at the time, Fraser and Ruben. My wife said to me, "Look, you got to make a choice. Me or the kids?" And I didn't want to lose my kids. Didn't want to lose my kids. Didn't want to be that person that my mother and father was. Never said that I'd ever lay hands on my kids. And I've got 4 great kids. And I've never laid a hand on any of my kids. All my kids have been to university. They're all got great jobs. Proud grandfather of one, and another one on the way. But yeah, I didn't want to lose my kids. Didn't want to lose my kids. So I knew what I'd got to do. So I tried going to an organisation which was going at the time, and methadone tablets and were out, methadone juices was out, and I tried it. And I didn't want to go down that road, because I was only going from one drug to another drug. So I just said, nah, this is not the way for me. So I did cold turkey. So I asked Susan to lock me in the room for 2 weeks. And I did cold turkey for 2 weeks. So shit, piss, sweats, you name it, what I went through for 2 weeks. My food was passed through the door. And I managed to get through it. And I think it's because I did it that way it's because I did it that way is why I presume I've been clean for 33 years and never relapsed once. So I think that was the way to do it for me, and not do it the other way. So I changed my life from then and decided that I needed to find somewhere else to channel my my energy. So I went to the gym, and that's where a whole new addiction started. And I say it was an addiction because I would train 3 times a day, 7 days a week, and I bulked up massively, became very confident, split up from my wife, met up with my second partner, remarried, started doing some work in the community, trying to give some back, worked in the homeless shelters, doing my bit to try and help back. And then my wife and my friends told me, what the hell? You know, you are in the gym, you live your life in the gym, why don't you become a personal trainer? And I went, I've got a mortgage to pay, well, I'm going to make the money from that. So I spoke to a friend who was an area manager at Virgin Active Derby, and I was using his gym because my partner was a lawyer over there at the time, so I had a free membership. And he said, come and work for me in Sheffield as a personal trainer. You could do your personal training through us. So I did. So I used to commute from Nottingham to Sheffield every single day. And that's where I became a personal trainer. And quite a successful one, because I went in and told the general manager that I wanted to be an elite trainer within 6 months. Because there's a normal trainer, advanced trainer, and an elite trainer, which is the toppest in the club. I wanted to be an elite trainer within 6 months, and I wanted to be #1 in the country. Now, Phil Scott was a football player for Sheffield Wednesday back in the day, and he just laughed at me and he said, no way, because he was then general manager. He said, it's no way, it'll take you 2 years to build up a list. Well, within 6 months I was an elite trainer, and within 11 months I was #1 in the country out of 764 personal trainers, highest sales ever. So Phil Scott came to see me on the day when he got the results and shook my hand and said, no one's ever done this. So quite an achievement for me. Within 2 years I wanted my own gym, got my own gym, and then it got voted the cleanest gym in Sheffield. And that's when Channel 4 were doing a television show called Obsessive Compulsive Cleaners and Country House Rescue, and they just started the first series. One of my clients had told them about me, a bit of a sergeant major who made his clients clean the gym. Got in touch with me and came and filmed me for a day and loved what I did. And so I became a presenter for Obsessive Compulsive Cleaners for over 7 years. And Country House Rescue, did over 25-30 shows. And then from there, you know, things just got better and better. Am I happy with how life's turned out? Yeah, I'm very happy, because I've seen from the bottom to where I am today. People say to me, why do you have so much energy? Because people always judge people on just seeing them how they are and how they carry on. I have a lot of energy, and the reason why I have that energy, because I've seen the pits and I've seen where I am today. And why I am where I am today, I'll always be happy, because I don't want to go back to that place. Yes, there is one fear in my life, and that fear is going back to the streets. And I still live that fear every single day. And it's a horrible thing to have hanging over you. But it is still there, it plays in my mind quite a lot. Okay, since working for Channel 4, I became an inspirational and motivational speaker, and I work for School Speakers of London. and I go into the schools, and basically they show my life story, and I open the floor to questions. And every time I put this video on, I have to relive what I did and what I went through as a child, and I cry every single time. Every time I go into that school. But if I can turn just one person into goodness, who actually sees something in me and that they want to make a change in their life, I'll relive it every single day, because that's all I want to do. I've always said all I want to do is to give back to the community, because there was nobody there for me. And now that you've got these organisations like BAME and this organisation as well, I'm here to support those guys, because there is people out there who are still struggling the way I did and who need help, because it's not hard, it's not easy trying to get through it on your own. And that's why I'm here today, to give my feedback on the community help that's out there.